One. Greetings, dear colleagues, candidates, and the public. Today, on January 16, 2025, the advisory group of experts gathered in full to conduct an interview with the candidate for the position of judge of the Constitutional Court of Ukraine, Ivan Volodymyrovich Nazarov. In particular, all 6 members of the AGE are present. Secretary of the AGE, Ma'am Maureen O'Connor, the AGE member, Madam Hanna Suhotska, the AGE members, Mr. Yaroslav Romanyuk, Mr. Aler Salar, and Mr. Vasil Shakun, as well as myself, the head of the AGE, Oksana Vasilchenko. Also, during the interview, deputy members of the AGE are present. Mr. Vitaly Machinchuk, Mr. Richard Barrett, Mr. Thomas Griffith. I would like to know that we are working in a shelter, so in the event of an air raid, the interviews will continue without interruption. I would also like to remind you that the interview is being recorded and broadcast live on the resources of the AGE and the Constitutional Court of Ukraine. I also draw the attention of members of the AGE and the candidate regarding the restriction of the use of sensitive data and information with limited access live. If necessary, to discuss such questions, the AGE will limit the broadcast for this time. We are ready to begin, so I will turn the floor over to the AGE Secretary, Madam Maureen O'Connor, for short representation candidate and reminder regulations interviews. Please, Maureen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dear colleagues, everyone who is watching us, and as our chair has already said, now the advisory group of experts will conduct an interview with the candidate Ivan Nazarov. Let me remind you that the opportunity to interview, is a mandatory stage of evaluating candidates as part of assessing their compliance with the criterion of high moral qualities. Approximately 1 hour is allocated for the interview, and the time limit for answering questions is up to 3 minutes. Traditionally, we ask all candidates to be concise, to answer the questions clearly, unambiguously, and directly to the point. At the end of the interview, the candidate will be given up to 5 minutes to make a closing statement. I would also like to note that during the processing of materials about candidate Nazarov, the AGE sent him questions for written explanations, so the candidate had the opportunity to prepare and to provide answers. So, Ivan Nazarov, a candidate for the post of Judge of the Constitutional Court of Ukraine, is with us now, who has been admitted to the competitive selection by the Committee of the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine. Mr. Nazarov is a Doctor of Legal Sciences, a professor of the Department of Civil Justice and Advocacy of the Yaroslav the Wise National Law University, and deputy head of the National Agency for Quality Assurance of Higher Education. He also works as a chief researcher at the Institute of Lawmaking and Scientific Legal Expertise of the National Academy of Sciences of Ukraine. In 2011, he defended his doctoral dissertation on the topic of judicial systems of Ukraine and the countries of the European Union, a comparative legal analysis. In addition, I would like to remind you that Ivan Nazarov already participated in the competitive selection last year and was interviewed by the advisory group of experts at that time. Mr. Nazarov, if you would like to add something at the beginning of your presentation about your credentials, feel free to do so. Otherwise, we will start with the questions.
Thank you. I have nothing to add. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll start with the questioning then, please.
Dear Ivan Volodymyrovich, during the previous competition for the position of the judge of the Constitutional Court, you mentioned in the documents regarding the income of your parents that there were certain mistakes. You provided this information in the response to the written communication within this competition. Please tell us what are the errors and indicate what actions you took during the last year, any actions to find out your parents' income and what were their results. Thank you. Yes, unfortunately, I did not notice these mistakes initially. However, as any candidate, I do have the right before the interview to analyze the materials of the portfolio, and within reviewing my documentation, I also analyzed the information provided by the tax services regarding my family and I. And I noticed upon review that the information regarding the income of my parents was not included in these documents, namely the retirement payments that my father and my mother receive. In the documentation provided by the state services, this income was not specified. I made a decision that this is an important information piece that should be included and should reflect their funds and financial capacities. That is why I repeatedly mentioned this to the advisory group of experts. And throughout the months that have gone since the last competition, I did ask my parents to take actions regarding these issues, to make official requests to the state services to receive the information on their retirement payments and the dynamics of these payments. My parents did send the corresponding request to the state services, and I provided the requests to AGE, and you could also see that it was not quite easy to receive this information, since this data was not provided to my parents upon their request. Though I do know that the pension fund did answer their requests, and I do know that now the AGE has this information. Yes, the AGE accepts this information from the pension fund, and we believe that this question is closed. However, we do have some other questions. Within the previous competition for the position of judge of the Constitutional Court of Ukraine, the advisory group of experts had reasonable doubts about the legality of the sources of origin of your property and the conformity of your standard of living and that of your family members to the declared income. With this in mind, we would like to re-provide clarification on the following issues. According to your declarations, on December 28, 2006, you purchased a 2006 Hyundai Accent for 86,000 hryvnias. Please explain which funds were used to purchase this car and what are the sources or origin of these funds. Thank you for your question. Within the previous competition and in my written communication, I explained that this car Hyundai was purchased by my parents as a gift to me. Okay, let's move on. According to your declarations, in July 2011, you purchased a Ford Kuga automobile, year of production 2011, for 283,000 hryvnias. Please explain the source of these funds. Thank you for the question. At the time, I sold the Hyundai automobile and I purchased the Ford Kuga automobile. The funds were also provided by my parents. Thank you. And after some time, on July 1st, 2014, you purchased a Ford Kuga car, year of production 2013, worth 390,000 hryvnias. Please explain the source of the funds. In this case, I sold the previous Ford Kuga car and I purchased this new car. I used my own fundings, and some part of the fundings was provided by my parents. According to your declarations, on February 1st, 2017, you purchased an apartment with an area of 88.5 square meters worth 890,469 hryvnias in Kharkiv. Please explain the source of the funds and whose funds were used to purchase this apartment. Thank you. To purchase this apartment, I used my savings earned throughout my professional life. I did take the mortgage for this apartment with the first payment constituting the 30% of the total sum, and then throughout the next years, I was paying the mortgage, taking into account that in 2014 the inflation process happened in Ukraine. Back then, it was quite a bargain, so I decided to use this opportunity. As I explained in the response of my written communication, I was the person who provided the funding for this purchase. You also were a co-founder of Institute of Legal Protection of Business LLC. Please describe the activities of this institute and your role in the activity of this business entity. Thank you for your question. This was a very interesting experience for me. Back then, I was a graduate student, and from time to time, I did question my decision to go to academia. That is why I took the opportunity to organize the LLC to practice law. This is when we co-founded the Institute of Legal Protection of Business. I did have a 10% ownership and a director's position at the institute. We were providing legal services and conducting trainings and workshops on relevant topics of current legislation and the application of the legislation. This LLC worked for a year, and then I noticed that my practical work does not allow me to conduct my scientific work efficiently, and I decided to leave the institute and to leave this practical position. So I left the LLC and continued my scientific activities. Thank you. Do you maintain business or friendly relations with your colleagues at Institute of Legal Protection of Business? I did have a question regarding several personalities who were also the co-founders of this LLC. After leaving the institute and after resigning from the position of the director, I do not keep in touch with my colleagues, namely with Nekhoroshkov Roman Borisovich. I did not meet him ever since. One of your colleagues, one of your ex-colleagues, Roman Nekhoroshkov, was involved in criminal proceedings under Article 368-2, illegal enrichment, due to failure to declare a significant amount of property. Due to an unknown coincidence, from 2017 to 2020, the candidate owned an apartment at the address of Kharkiv, in the house at the same address where, according to journalists, that he lived. This is the first time that I hear about this. After leaving the Institute of Legal Protection of Business LLC, I did not keep in touch with Mr. Nihoroshkov, and I have never seen him at the specified address. I will now pass the floor to Mr. Alish.
Thank you, Vasil. Good day, candidate. I have the following question to you. From the resolution of the Chervonozavodski District Court of Kharkiv, dated December 20th, 2017, it is apparent that in respect of your wife, the Department of Economic Protection in the Kharkiv region of the Department of Economic Protection of the National Police of Ukraine drew up a report on the commission of an administrative offense related to corruption provided for in Part 1 of Article 172, 6 of the Code of Administrative Offenses. According to the report dated July 17, 2017, your wife, holding the position of assistant to the deputy chairman of the Court of Appeal of the Kharkiv region, that is being a subject to the law of Ukraine on prevention of corruption, violated the law of Ukraine on prevention of corruption in terms of timely submission of a declaration. Based on the analysis of this resolution, this administrative offense case against your wife was closed due to expiration of the time limits for bringing her to administrative responsibility. Since your wife systematically failed to appear in court sessions due to illness, do you know the circumstances of this situation? And if so, could you please indicate what was the real reason for your wife's late submission of the declaration?
Thank you for the question. If I'm not mistaken, my wife recently started working at the Court of Appeal. This was her first experience when she was supposed to submit a declaration. And I believe that she missed the deadline for submitting the declaration and submitted the declaration 2 days later. She was very worried about this. This fact was noted by the corresponding organs, and therefore the case was opened. I do not quite recall the circumstances of this proceeding, since, based from what I know about this fact, she did violate the terms of submitting the declaration, and I do believe that the reason for this was insufficient experience of submitting the declaration. It was a real pity for us. Thank you.
Well, your wife systematically did not appear at the court sessions for a long time due to illness. Did you provide her with any legal advice not to appear, or any legal advice or clarification on legal issues regarding this proceeding in the case of committing an administrative offense?
Thank you for your question. My advice was very simple. I did advise her to submit the declaration on time. So once he missed the deadline, I did not give her any advice, because what else can you advise in this case? Everything happened according to the law. Obviously, I did not monitor her presence in the court proceedings, because this is not my story.
Okay, thank you for your answers, and I have no further question to you. I pass the floor back to the chairperson of the AGE.
Я хочу ще одне питання невелике
I have one more question. Could you please tell me, your wife works in the Constitutional Court, is it so? Yes, my wife works at the Constitutional Court as a scientific advisor at the Constitutional Court. Understand? Thank you.
Dear colleagues, are there any other questions for the candidate? There aren't. Ivan Volodymyrovich, you have the opportunity to make a short closing statement, up to 5 minutes. Thank you. Dear members of the advisory group of experts, I would like to use this opportunity to explain why I participate in the competition to the Constitutional Court of Ukraine for the second time. You know that I am the specialist and the scientist in the sphere of the prosecution and the legal activity, and it's a wide topicality, and I have worked on the judicial system, the status of the judges, on the order of the judiciary, and others. And I think that any outside observer who is familiar and who knows about other specialization in the framework of the law, like constitutional law, and there are many specialists on this specialization. You may also think that the Constitutional Court of Ukraine is to be filled with such candidates and judges who are the specialists in constitutional law. But in this context, I would like to add that the Constitutional Court is the collegial body, and all decisions are made in accordance with this principle. And if during the decision making there is the combination of the specialists in different spheres, specialties, I mean, like the specialist in the constitutional law and the one who is specializes in the judiciary and in the judicial system, then these decisions will be more reasonable and comprehensive. That's why I think that I could be efficient in the Constitutional Court of Ukraine, and I can participate in this competition because I can be useful there. But this is not the only reason why I have applied for this competition, and then there is another reason. In the during my life, I have always tried to stick to certain principles, to adhere to certain principles, simple principles. I always try to do the right thing. I try to be honest about me and in relation to people surrounding me. I try to make the reasonable decisions and to be responsible for its consequences. Life is such when nobody has insurance from mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes, but you also have to draw conclusions. If you made a mistake, you are to apologize. If you have caused some damage, you have to compensate the damage. You have to draw certain conclusions, trying to avoid these mistakes in the future and becoming better. These are very simple rules that are peculiar of any person who is healthy, normal, and it doesn't matter whether or not they participate in the competition. And I think these principles are shaped during our life, but also given by our parents. And I think in all that I have in my life, I owe it to my parents because they provided me the education, and all of my success that I can boast of. That's also I have to appreciate my parents. My father served in the armed forces of Ukraine, in the security service of Ukraine. He has proven to be a very good specialist and expert. For many years, he served abroad. When the Soviet Union was dissolved, he made the decision to return to Ukraine to participate in building up the independent state. During his professional activity, he had rewards. He retired, and after he retired, he managed to implement himself in the realize himself in the private sector. After he retired, the state called him again to work in the state bodies. He worked in the internal affairs system. He worked at the state enterprise that is of great significance now. In the framework of all this activity, he for many times has undergone special inspections. And in the framework of that inspection, the competent bodies no time had any claims against his professionalism and had no doubts on the questions that we now refer to integrity. I know his close environment where everyone consider him a decent man. I respect my parents very much, and I have no doubt that they are decent people, dignified people, and I'm grateful to them for helping me along the way. That's why I'm trying to use the same principles. I'm trying to apply the same principles. So I couldn't restrain myself from participating in this competition for the second time, because I have to add additional information. I have to provide additional information to the ADG that I hope was perceived in a positive way. So dear members of the advisory group, I'm very grateful for your work. I'm grateful for giving me this opportunity to participate in this competition. I'm wishing you a successful completion of this competition. Thank you. Thank you, Ivan Volodymyrovich, for your answers. Dear colleagues and the public, I hereby declare the interview of the advisory group of experts with candidate Ivan Volodymyrovich completed.